Hey guys, welcome to another debrief video. This is for mission 2 of Black Tempest, and just to give an overview, again we're starting up here in Krimsk. The idea is that there's a larger strike package that's heading south. Boy, I cannot move TAC view very well. Heading down into the Gory Pass once again to strike more targets. But we've identified enemy forces that have been moving through the mountains trying to find an alternate route through this pass. And so the idea is that this force, it's the morning, they've kind of held up in a forward position. On the ground we've got some BMPs and some short range defenses. I think there's some ZSUs, there's an SA-8, and then off just past that. So the idea is that, you know, there's this ground force, there's probably some more elements behind it, and then as you get to the more target-rich environment of logistics and command and control, you've got a larger system. So we've got this SA-11 out here. Again, realistically, you'd have a lot more systems, but the way I looked at this is I'm not going to overload the system with a bunch of stuff that's not going to be relevant. I'm not going to get close enough to an SA-9 or an SA-8 or something like that in this area, so I'm not going to put anything down, but the SA-11 will come into play. And as well, I'm not going to put anything down here in the Gory Pass. I'm not even going to have AI doing stuff because it's just going to get muddled. All right, so the idea is that, again, this large force is going down here, and it's almost sort of a feint to allow a two-ship strike to get in and just cause a little bit of damage here. So we'll fast forward a little bit and get to that. So the lineup here is myself and Echo, and then Willie, and I think Killer was with them. Sorry if I misremembered that, but we were coming in using ground radar and using our targeting pod to try to find the target. So we had a general grid. The grid was pretty much on where they were at, but it wasn't, you know, specific on a vehicle. So Echo was using the radar to find some targets, and then we were passing those targets on to lead, and then getting our pod on. We were getting the indications of the SA-11, so we knew that it was out there. We were getting indications of SA-8, and so the initial idea was to try to skirt along the edge of the SA-11's engagement area. But as you can see, that we once we finally committed to this maneuver, this is us taking a look at the target area, and Willie cuts in just a little bit earlier than planned, or I think conceptually, I think maybe he thought he was further down south, and these things happen. It's all well and good, the Monday morning quarterback. But a lot of times too, the terrain will sort of dictate to you. Your brain will automatically try to draw straight lines where there aren't any straight lines, and so sometimes that can throw you off. So Willie turned in pretty early here and made a good drop, but you can see that the SA-11 engaged. Now, you know, he started a maneuver, and the result was that they lost the bomb. The missile ended up just being defeated anyway, so not a huge deal. So at this point, I already knew that that happened, so I pushed further south, but not south enough, and came in, made my drop, and they also fired on us. But what this allowed us to do is we kept our distance and allowed us to figure out, okay, where is this guy engaging? So you can start to build that situational awareness. And again, this is very, you know, seed sort of idea that you can find out where the enemy's at, get him to shoot at you, get him to present himself, and then once you figure out where he's at, you can find ways to either attack and kill or just avoid. And in this case, we wanted to avoid. There was no reason. This was our primary target, and this is one thing I will say for a lot of DCS players: you get sucked into this, right? This guy's shooting at you, you want to shoot back. That's not our mission. So I was glad that we didn't get pulled in on that. I was kind of letting Willie drive the show. He was the flight lead, and whatever he wanted to do, I was going to support. But I was glad to see that we stayed on target. So now we can see that we've made that adjustment. So Willie's coming in from south to north and sort of just a beam that SA-11 and makes his drop. And I come even a little bit further out because of communication between myself and Echo, that there were some trees in the way. If I would have turned in right where Willie did, I would not have had a good view of my target. So I pushed out just a little bit further, and we made our drop, no problem. So at this point, again, you can see that we are basically taking the SA-11 out of the fight. We've figured out his weak spot, and we are removing him from the fight. Now at this point, you can see that we're shifting, and that's because what I've had set up was a strip alert of these MiG-21s. Now, I kind of screwed this up because I didn't do a lot of good planning. The idea was that there was an air spawn set of MiG-29s that would show up, and then the MiG-21s would also show up. I did not have I didn't trigger the MiG-29s. I can't remember if I had it set up for a radio trigger or if it was based on a number of kills. But these guys took off and got here a lot faster than I think I had just planned in my head. So it kind of didn't work out. But we shifted focus on the MiG-21s, picked them up pretty early. Willie gets off 2 shots, and they dodge both of them as only DCS AI can sometimes. And then I followed up with 2 shots as well, and they dodged all of these missiles. So we've already thrown a lot of missiles at MiG-21s, and this is going to come into play later when I decide whether I'm going to launch those MiG-29s at us or not. Because again, the idea here is that we just had enough to kind of protect ourselves, but we're fundamentally loaded up with bombs. So they've managed to defeat all of those missiles that we shot. We turn back in, and Willie finally gets a shot off that kills one of the aircraft. And the other guy, he kind of just went a little bit crazy. So as I said, there's notionally another force down here. Obviously that's not real, and I really didn't know what this guy was doing. I didn't have any AWACS or anybody helping control, so I had Olympus up, and at one point Willie asked for a Casmo AWACS bearing, and we knew this guy was to the south, so I gave him a bearing, and we turned back in. Now this guy was, I don't know if he was set on ACE and I just forgot about it, but he was really good at dodging missiles. So he came in, I fired an AIM-120, and he defeated it just barely. And then Willie went bonsai, went straight in on the guy, and this dude started flaring like crazy. And let's get zoomed in here. And came in with a good shot, high aspect, and the guy managed to evade it and just kind of dip right below Willie. I was above, could see all of this happening, and had an idea of which one was which. It helped that this guy was flaring like crazy, and so I was able to roll back in on him. Now I was finger fumbling around. It's kind of one of those where I still get a little bit confused sometimes with the radar when my blood's pumping. So I was kind of mashing buttons at this point because I couldn't get the radar to do what I was doing, and I realized what I did now after the fact. So basically I was kind of just visual on this guy at this point, and didn't even uncage my Sidewinder. I was just so laser beam focused on trying to get my nose on him, and the whole time I could just feel Willie right here behind me. I just knew that he was just angling for the kill. He's very aggressive, and I knew that he was going to snake it from me, so I was trying desperately not to screw this up. So when I finally felt like the shot was good, I took it and hit him right as Willie is just sneaking in. I could just tell, I could just feel him over my shoulder, and he was coming in, and we were talking on the radio. It wasn't like he was going to take it, but I knew the moment I said that I did not have a shot, he was going to gun this guy, because at this point I believe Willie's out of missiles, and I have 1, maybe 2 missiles remaining. I think I've got an AIM-9 and a 120. So we finish that guy off. We get our bearings, figure out that we're heading the wrong way. We turn back in. At this point, we're talking about fuel. How much fuel do we have? Do we have enough to do any more damage, or do we need to just head home, or do we need to hit the tanker? So we decide that we've got the ability to go up there. We already got this guy dialed in. We know what we can get away with as far as the SA-11. So we go in and we make a couple more passes. Again, the idea is to attrit this as much as possible. No one's expecting us to get 100% success and kill all this stuff. We're just trying to kill stuff to enable follow-on forces to either kill them on the ground or from the air. And it helps that we do identify the SA-8. I think on my last shot is we kill the SA-8. And at this point, we realize that we are out of gas. Now, once again, another tanker faux pas. I don't know what has been going on lately. I think I have figured it out, but I feel like something's changed, or I don't know what's going on. But the tanker was orbiting this point instead of, you know, orbiting between with the racetrack. And yes, before you say anything, I did check as far as where the order was at and was it set to racetracks. I don't know what he was doing. You can even see here he kind of pulled like a straight line. But we tried to tank with him. He was doing some wild stuff. He was listening, and then he started turning away. He's just doing madness. And we finally, again, did the math and said, screw it, let's just go home. Now, I will say that we've already done Mission 3 at the time of me recording this. The tanker worked fine. So I think the trick was I just had to delete him completely from the template that I'm using for this campaign. and then just redo them and just make sure that he's working right from the get-go, because any problems just seem to get transplanted over into further missions. So at any rate, yeah, you know, just a long flight home, no issues. Got home, did a little break, and called it a night. Anyhow, like I said, I did not launch the MiG-29s. I had them. I wanted to add a little bit more spice to this, particularly because they were coming from this direction. So the question there is, okay, well, how do you, if you're here, you know there's an SA-11 here, and now you got an air threat coming in, what do you do? Obviously, the smart play is to push back, turn back in. You don't want to just push in on these guys and run into the SA-11. That was the conundrum I wanted to put Willie in, essentially. But by the time we got to that point, the MiG-21s had already exhausted all of our missiles. I think at one point I even sort of prompted Willie, like, hey, they're just MiG-21s, you know, but I didn't want to say, let's not shoot all of our 120s at them. But it is what it is, and we did what we could. I could have triggered them anyway just to see what we would do, but I was afraid that it would just become a race back home, and it would just kind of get silly. So I do keep an eye on these missions to not just be entertaining. I hope they're entertaining, but also a learning experience for the crews that are flying. For myself, you know, I'm still not a great air-to-air guy, so I'm learning a lot flying with dudes flying on their wing, and kind of picking up the brevity and picking up the tone of how things work. But it's also a training event for these guys who are having to lead flights and make decisions that affect not just themselves, but the rest of the flight, the rest of the elements. Anyhow, that's it. I hope you guys enjoy the series, the campaign. I'm having a lot of fun just kind of coming up with the narratives to it. I guess I'm a nerd like that. The flying's fun, but just kind of creating the story and crafting the narrative has been a lot of fun as well. So hopefully you're enjoying it. We've got mission 3 coming up here soon. Mission 4, I'm hoping to fly here in another night or two. And I think I've got about a 6 mission arc for this. I got to get some Hornet guys involved. And then we'll move on to the next thing, which I'm thinking is P-47s, but we'll see how that turns out. All right, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you guys later.